Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MSP. This is Ukraine War News Update. First part there for the 16th of June 2024. Did you miss me? I've been away a little bit. Went up to the north of Hampshire to a lovely village near Stockbridge. Beautiful thatched cottages all around. It was just a delightful environment. And it was so amazing to see a whole bunch of you guys there. Hugs aplenty. Great to talk to you. And I'm so sad that I didn't get to talk to everyone who was there. Just, yeah, really sorry if we didn't hook up and whatnot. But it was an absolute privilege to speak to you guys. I hope it was of interest. Difficult to know, really. The local member of parliament was there for the first half. He had to shoot off at half time, but that was great. I would love to have spoken to him. Really great. A load of you I know by name now, although what multiple sclerosis has done to me is wrecked my ability to remember names. So people are telling me their names last night, and then within like 2 minutes I was like, oh, what's your name again? So apologies about that, but it's so great to meet some of you. Really, really awesome. Anyway, on with the Ukrainian daily figures from the general staff. All the usual caveats apply. You can find them in the description to the video. Now, interesting, 1,160 personnel lost. That's fairly high, above the 1,000, creeping back up a little bit there. It had dropped to below 1,000, so that's significant. Then we have 0 tanks and only 6 APCs, so obviously both of those very much under the average. Fits and starts. Sometimes you get days like this. Is it because it's a Sunday? Doubtful. I don't think that makes too much difference anymore. Occasionally we have seen it where Mondays and Sundays have been a little bit, we've seen less activity in the stats. It's not that then there's less activity, I think, on the front lines. People stop for the Sunday or whatever, but it's something to do with the collation, maybe not as many people working in general staff, whatever, I don't know. But I doubt that's it. I just would have thought that there is probably there would just be fewer Russian attacks taking place across the front lines. They are fairly exhausted, I would have thought, in terms of, well, just in general, but in terms of the amount of vehicles they have to throw at the Ukrainians. I would have thought, again, speculation here, but they can't keep going on at the rate they're going and losing the amount of stuff they are losing. 58 artillery systems is a massive number in that category. That's the highest number we've seen for a few days, for some time. But that is going to hurt the Russians. 1 multiple launch rocket system, 56 vehicles and fuel tanks, and 3 pieces of special equipment. So up and down with the figures there, some very low, some 0, and some pretty high. So it just depends what the category is there. Now, occupiers near Novomykhailivka tried to come in columns for an assault. I don't know how old this is, but this is, unless this is the same column that I reported, but Novomykhailivka, it's in Mariinka direction that was reported before. Anyway, it doesn't matter how many vehicles the Russians seem to attack the Ukrainians with, they are getting a real bloody nose, the Russians, and losing lots of equipment, hand over fist, really. We have, here's a destroyed Grad, BM-21 Grad, so that's a multiple launch rocket system. And again, even in this video, you can see destroyed equipment nearby as this FPV drone slams into the vehicle. I don't know if we've got, yeah, there's the end result of that. Big smoking wreck there. So that was that. Then we have, I thought this was a fairly interesting data point to consider. So FPVs are cheaper than shells, and the Ukrainian attacks on this Russian army battalion make that clear. FPVs have passed artillery as the biggest killer on the Russia-Ukrainian battlefield. The number and PGM accuracy, so precision guided munition accuracy, of FPVs, first person view drones, taken together leave no other conclusion. So what's he referring to when he's stating that? Well, a Russian battalion keeps a daily log of what time a Ukrainian FPV drone arrives at their positions and when artillery strikes occur. I don't know if this is a new record, but 290 FPV attacks in a single day is pretty impressive. Now, we had heard the other day that there was maybe 10 to 20% success rate for those. So these are attacks. We don't know to be honest, this almost certainly will not include certain drones that have fallen out of the sky from electronic warfare or that have malfunctioned and fallen to the ground. So they almost certainly won't be included in these stats unless they have knowledge of that drone more explicitly. So this won't be the full amount of drones that will be flown at the battalion, but it makes you wonder how many drones are being used on a daily basis in any given sector of the front line. Just phenomenal numbers. How many succeed? Are these the successful ones? Probably not. There's probably more in there, but 290 in a single day is insane for that battalion. Okay. So talking of drones, Andrew Perpetua, who gets to see an awful lot of footage, he scours the footage for all that data. He says the skill of Magyar pilots is unworldly. So remember, you got Magyar's Birds, a guy with a beard, who is the foremost drone operator, or at least his units are. He, I think, does a lot of training, does a lot of fundraising, does an awful lot of stuff. Originally positioned or more lately positioned down on the Dnipro River, where they were causing havoc for the Russian forces who were trying to dislodge the Ukrainians from the left bank of the Dnipro River around the Krinky area. And then as the Kharkiv offensive started with the Russians coming down from Belgorod, his unit was drafted up to Kharkiv, where he has been very much lauded. I think the work that he's done up there has been a huge component of how the Ukrainians have managed to repel the Russians. And here, Andrew Perpetua saying the skill of these pilots is unworldly. Like, imagine being a hobby drone pilot and seeing these guys fly an FPV drone through a bush, literally through the bush. How many drones have you lost in tree limbs, let alone bush branches? But yeah, incredibly accurate piloting from these drone pilots who, the more you do anything, the better you get, right? 10,000 hours and all that. These guys have been putting in the hours and have been incredibly successful, and are just becoming more and more successful as individual operators. And Andrew can see that in the footage that he surveys. Talking about drones still, 22 kilometer deep FPV strike, says this source. The real range is closer to 30 kilometers. In other words, you don't usually let fly your drone from the contact line. You'll be somewhat behind the contact line and trying to hit the Russians or the enemy over the contact line. This source is saying, because we did go from 10 kilometers. 10 kilometers, that's what they're doing. Now we've moved to 20 kilometers. Well, 20 kilometers is now a new record. I remember it's 17 kilometers was the new record. Now 20 kilometers is pretty regular. And here we got 22 kilometers behind the contact line, thus leaving the impression that they are now having a 30 kilometer range on their FPV drones. That is significant because it really changes the way the Russians behave in terms of their logistics and staging points and etc. etc. Now, whether the Russians have this capability with their drones, I don't know, but 22 kilometers, if they inch these ranges further and further out, then it is a bit of a game changer. I mean, drones are already something of a game changer in terms of warfare in general, but just the increased capabilities for these such common weapons is going to play merry havoc with the enemy. Ukrainian units across the whole front are receiving more and more ammo. Quote, the news on ammunition is getting better and better. Not only artillery brigades are starting to receive shells, but also conventional mechanized brigades, which not long ago were less well supplied with artillery ammunition. So the trend is improving. However, there are more frequent problems with barrel wear, which need to be noticed in time and the guns sent for repair. I was wondering about Ukrainian barrel wear and how much of an issue that is, because we hear about it a lot with the Russians, but of course the Ukrainians are going to be suffering similarly. Although firing fewer rounds, they will have less barrel wear, but the more rounds they get through the Czech initiative and allied supplies, the more challenging that's going to be for replacing the barrels. And I don't know what the production of barrels is like across Europe. Anyway, Euromaidan Press, on the other hand, says Western military aid trickles in, easing Ukraine's artillery deficit, but in limited quantities, decreasing Russia's artillery advantage somewhat, but not substantially impacting frontline situation yet. And that's what the Institute for the Study of War, the American military think tank, says, referring to Ukraine's defense official. So that is a bit of a, not so much a corrective. It's like, yeah, things are improving, but there's a long way to go, really, to get parity. And it is somewhat alleviating the frontline situation for the Ukrainians. An RT correspondent, news war correspondent, Nikita Tsitsagi, has died reporting from near Vuhledar. So again, it's another Russian propagandist reporter perishing in the war. They have lost an awful lot. I reported only, I think, yesterday on or was it the day before, on 3 more. One died, two really badly injured in another incident. Right, going on to strikes, there's no news of strikes on either side of the border last night. So it looks like both nations took a bit of time off. However, as I've said many times before, often news trickles throughout the day, so that actually we do understand that Ukrainians mainly were using their drones to strike at facilities or targets well within Russia. Here we have something from yesterday daytime, which is a massively significant fire. A gigantic explosion engulfed a gas storage facility in the Russian city of Saratov. So Saratov is kind of northeast of Ukraine, and there's the Engels 2 air bases there, which is significant. A significant target for the Ukrainians, considering that's where a lot of their bombers take off from, that rain down hell on Ukraine. Flames rose dozens of meters. The causes of the accident are unknown. I don't know if this is sabotage, if this is a careless smoke, or if this is a strike with drones. But that fire, you can see, is a massive, massive fire. Right, on to other bits and pieces. So Dmitry Peskov says he's the spokesperson for the Kremlin, but often just spouts utter tripe. Quote, Russia will continue to clear and create a buffer zone in the Kharkiv region in order to protect the Belgorod region from shelling. Okay, so this concerns that offensive in the Kharkiv region, where he is, 2 things to note from here. One, that one of the intentions is definitely to create a buffer zone for Belgorod. So that is something. Another is the idea that he is claiming they're continuing to clear and create a buffer zone. That speaks of the success of the Russians in, they're going to continue doing what they're doing, they're clearing and creating a buffer zone. So that's what the Russians are doing. On the other hand, the reality appears to be that the Russians are on the receiving end of a bit of a bloody nose there. And we've got that small area that has been surrounded, where I was talking yesterday about not knowing how many troops the Russians had there. Well, now a number has been put on it in this cauldron, as they call it, in Vovchansk. It's supposed to be estimated 400 Russian troops there. And that's Russian journalist Nezorov. The Russians are on the brink of surrendering, according to him. So there are no specific details, he says, but it is reliably known that the cauldron worked. About 400 orcs. So this is a Russian-born Ukrainian journalist. Russians are completely surrounded in the ruins of the aggregate plant in Vovchansk. Data on losses are contradictory. According to fragments of radio interceptions, the 200th and 300th are mixed. That means the dead and the wounded, cargo 200, cargo 300, they are mixed. There is no medicine. Whether the cauldron formed on its own or the Russians were lured there is unknown. The VSU officers smile mysteriously, so the Ukrainians obviously happy with this. All attempts by the Russians to throw at least some battery and water there with their own people failed. A mass slaughter of Russians is unlikely, since their willingness to surrender is unusually high. It's not looking good for the Russians there. We have seen some surrenders recently. I think two Russian soldiers have surrendered from that. So there has been a bit of a trickle already, and that there was talk about whether that would precipitate, be foreshadowing a larger surrender there. but we'll keep an eye on that one. Okay, what else has happened? Last 24 hours, Poland helped out Ukraine's energy crisis. Overnight, the Poles gave some electricity to the Ukrainian grid. That is going to be an ongoing challenge for the Ukrainians as their energy infrastructure has been absolutely hammered. Ben Hodges says, what's going on here? Because you've got to remember, Ben Hodges was a big advocate of the Ukrainians being able to take back Crimea, or in the absence of attacking it with conventional ground forces, they could make it untenable so that the Russians pull out. And now he's going, oh, hello, what's going on here? In response to Russian occupiers in Crimea apparently are preparing to take all museum collections from the peninsula to Russia. The heads of museum institutions of Crimea received a letter from the so-called Ministry of Culture in the Republic of Crimea. Managers were ordered to prepare museum valuables for evacuation, that is, for theft. But of course, as terrible as that is with stealing cultural artifacts from Ukraine, this is also an indication that people are preparing for Crimea to be potentially to be invaded, or not invaded, to be liberated, to have the Ukrainians take the island with ground troops. You know, it might be airborne, might be Marines, probably both. I doubt it's going to be anything like coming in from the north. So, yeah, this could be on the cards. They are at least preparing for that possible eventuality. Now, there's been an issue in the Rostov-on-Don detention center just over the border from Ukraine, down in the south, not too far from Mariupol. ISIS-connected defendants seized guards at Rostov-on-Don detention center. They breached the window bars of their cell and gained access to the duty station, as reported by Russian media. Among the identified hostage takers are individuals previously convicted for connections to ISIS. The captors released a video featuring the hostages. Now, what's significant about this? Well, first of all, this has been all over the socials. This was quite a big thing in Russia. So the news is following this carefully. And then shortly afterwards, gunshots were sounded at the detention center, and it turns out that all of the prisoners involved in this were eliminated, is the claim. All 6 hostage takers at that Rostov detention center have been eliminated by special forces during the assault. So I won't show you this. However, that chap you see, his arm there, it looks like it's this guy who walks along around about here in a second. He has evidently been shot. Where is it? Anyway, one of them. He's been shot. I mean, they've all been shot, but the video shows, or still from the video itself, that guy there has him face down and shot, but his hands are in handcuffs. And of course, you do not handcuff someone after you've shot them. You just don't do that. So it appears that these people have been captured and then just executed. Make of that what you will. But yeah, you can tell that his arm there is going behind his back, essentially. Yeah. Right. Some of the biggest news coming out is concerning disinformation. Now, I spent my second part of the talk talking about disinformation last night. You know, that is really important to me. And talking about the sorts of things Russia is doing at the moment. And then lo and behold, within 12 hours of giving that talk, we have this. Russia is running a program flooding the newsrooms of 800 mainstream news outlets with fake stories and narratives to overload verification processes. That's referring to this Euronews article, Russia deliberately flooding newsrooms with fake content to overwhelm fact checkers, according to a study. But actually, it seems to have been not just like this is happening and here's a study, but I think they've been active over the last 24 hours. So Kremlin bots spam the internet with fake celebrity quotes against Ukraine. Fake quotes appeared over photos of celebrities such as Scarlett Johansson and Elton John calling for an end to Ukraine and describing European collapse. Now, the French aid to Ukraine also reports on this and says, the anti-bot for Navalny collective has identified a new anti-Ukrainian disinformation campaign. Kremlin bots distributed 120,000 messages with fake quotes from celebrities including Alain Delon, Léa Seydoux, Luc Besson, Elisabeth Debicki and Michel Mercier. So these are French famous people. And in April, Alain Delon was awarded the Order of Merit of Ukraine. This is quite clever for the Russians in that we know how quickly disinformation spreads compared to truth, so 6 times faster, and that you can't undo some of the damage that's done from stuff like this. So these quotes will land with some people, they will spread, and to undo that is virtually impossible. You can't take these ideas that people have had access to. You can't take those ideas out of their heads. And so what this does is it will have an effect on people's opinions of the war, and it will cause a bit of mayhem. I was wondering though whether it might backfire if you then start getting all of these famous people realizing that they've been incorrectly, or they've been maligned with these sort of fake statements, coming out and actually talking about that being wrong and how much they support Ukraine, that you could actually get a counterproductive end result whereby the narrative of countering this disinformation gets more purchase than the disinformation in the first place. That would be my hope. But it's stuff like this. You know, I talked last night about the actual, you know, it's not only the money spent on these projects, but it's the people. They have these buildings full of trolls that have got, their job is to do this, and they get, you know, bonuses for doing X, Y, and Z. It's your regular job with KPIs, with key performance indicators, no doubt. And what do? Nothing like that. We need to be employing office blocks of people to present not disinformation to Russia, but information, literally the truth. Here is a truth about Putin. Here is a truth about your country. Here's a truth about your history. This is a positive vision of what we would like Europe to look like in Ukraine and Russia, really, and counter that narrative that the Russians are so good at spreading. And I do worry that they have this mass of disinformation being flung at the internet, like flinging crap at a wall to see what sticks. So some of this will stick, and yeah, it just really gets my goat. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share. Again, really appreciate the support from people last night. I want to take this opportunity to very publicly give my huge appreciation to the two Marks, Mark B and Mark T, who sorted out last night and invited me to talk and organise the whole thing. And also to both, so two Marks, and both their wives are called Jenny. So Mark and Jenny, because that's not confusing, right? Who helped with the night as well, with food and with the admin and everything. Just really lovely two pairs of people there, Mark squared and Jenny squared. Absolutely fantastic. And Mark B put me up in his house, and we were drinking a fine Pinot until the early hours of the morning, chewing the cud, and that was absolute delight. Real delight to meet those guys, and I hope it's not the last time. It'd be great to have a more relaxed beer in a pub and just shoot the breeze and discuss all these things at a leisurely pace. But yeah, I just have to say thanks to them. They're lovely people, and hopefully not the last time we'll meet. And of course, you can continue to donate to the cause that we are fundraising for, which is drones to a unit in Ukraine. I got to handle one of the drones. Mark talked me through the process of how he procures them, sorts them out, gets them out to the unit, gets evidence that they're of all along the way for transparencies, and knows that they get to the final destination, that they get what they ask for. Is really great organisation that Mark is, that both those Marks are part of. Just absolutely fantastic. So please support that really great cause. I know some of you have been super generous with that, so thank you. And I'm going to be donating some today as well, partly on your behalf, that some people have given me some to donate to them, but also from myself, obviously, because it's such a worthwhile cause. I've already told you I'm absolutely rubbish with names, but massive shout out to Rob and Denisa. We have Dennis and Lisa, Paul Gilbert, Simon, Andy, Sophie, Dell, goodness me, Phil, Joe. Oh my goodness, the worst part about the talk last night. So one of you came up and said, look, and you brought your son with you. Was it Joe? Brought your son with you who's in the army. So I brought him along. And later at the end of the talk, he's like, well, my son brought his girlfriend along, but because he knew she wouldn't want to come, he convinced her that it was a comedy night. And she got there and it was like, this is a comedy night. Like, listen to me bang on about geopolitics. I presume at least one person had the worst night of their lives there. Just like, this is torture. So, yeah, sorry about that. I feel really bad, even though it wasn't me that duped anyone. But there you go. Really appreciate all of your support, both there and here. Thanks, guys. You take care, and I'll speak to you soon.